Over there on Morning Joe, they're not used to having an intelligent, reasonable conservative explaining the policies of President Trump. And so imagine how ugly it was when the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bezzant, sat at the table there with the whole Morning Joe crew. And it began with a humiliating enterprise. He was challenged with the left-wing Democrat talking point that always goes repeated without any sort of fact basis to it on the Morning Joe set, which is, we just bailed out a foreign country. How is it America first when you bail out Argentina? You hear it everywhere on the left, on MSNBC, on Morning Joe, on George Stephanopoulos, on CNN. That's a talking point that they repeat all the time, and they never bother to actually learn the truth about it. So now watch what happens when Scott Bezzant, in just like an assassin, slices and dices the talking point and douses it with truth.
So, Mr. Secretary, amid this discussion of costs and prices and affordability, how does a $20 billion bailout of Argentina help Americans? You're the president's point person on that. Can you explain to those here who are feeling the pinch, including America's farmers, why the United States is helping out Argentina?
Well, do you know what a swap line is?
It's currency swap, yes.
Yes, but what is that?
You're the Treasury Secretary.
Yes, but why would you call it a bailout?
That is how.
In most bailouts, you don't make money. The U.S. government made money. We used our financial balance sheet to stabilize the government. One of our great allies in Latin America, during an election, the president there won in a landslide. The government's going to make money, and I would rather use peace through economic strength than have to be shooting at narco boats coming offshore if the government collapsed. We have a generational opportunity in Latin America to create allies. We just saw an election in Bolivia. We're probably going to see an election in Colombia. We've seen them in Ecuador. We're going to see them in Chile. So by stabilizing the economy there and making a profit, then that's a very good deal for the American people. And there's a lot we could have been doing for American farmers, but Democrats closed the government.
So how has the United States made money off of this? You talk about trying to make more regional.
All right, let me pause it there for a second, because I just want to, there's more to this, as you can see. But there's one little moment I want to show you if you missed it. This is stuff that they've never heard. They've never heard the truth, the fact, and we haven't addressed this because honestly, this whole narrative that we bailed out Argentina has been a bogus, fake talking point. We haven't brought it up. It hasn't been really making the top 10 of our topic selections for the last month or so. But I'm glad that it's there now, because it gives us an opportunity to mock the stupidity of the people at the MSNBC newsroom, and specifically on Morning Joe, because I want to remind you, it's a news show, and these are news people. This is a reporter, this guy, Jonathan Lemire, is it, I think, from NBC News. Their job is to know the news, but they don't know the news. They know their talking points. They know their agenda-driven talking points, which is, we just bailed out Argentina. Well, a bailout of Argentina means you open up your treasury and you write them a check because they're in debt and going under. I know that because that's what the government did under Obama and under Biden. We did it for corporations. We did it for foreign governments. That's what they do. How is that America first? I gotcha. Scott Bezzant is like, it wasn't a bailout. We made available a line of credit if necessary, and we did a currency swap with them, which we've actually made money on already, and that stabilized the government. It ensured that they got an ally got reelected instead of somebody coming in there who's going to be a socialist or a Marxist. And this ends up building a relationship with a Latin American country, by the way, a region of the world that's been neglected by the last 50 years worth of presidents. So this is all win, 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 win. And as he was explaining this, I want you to see it. I don't know if you saw it or not, but watch this guy. This is, again, Jonathan Lemire, I believe is his name, the reporter. And then, oh God, I forget his name now, but he's just an odious individual. He's been on the panel there forever. He's a former Boston Globe opinion columnist. And I think he got busted for plagiarism years back, but of course he's Scarborough's buddy. Watch them exchange glances here when you realize as they look at each other, and I don't think they knew they were on camera, they basically say, do you know what the hell he's talking about? I don't know what the hell he's talking about. I've never heard of anything like this. They're ignorant of the news. They're ignorant of the facts. Scott Bezzant, so smooth. Like I said, like an assassin with a blade. Watch it. Here it comes. They're going to cut over to him real fast here. They do a wide shot. Now watch them look at each other. Watch them glance at each other because they have no idea. What? Oh, did you see that? Did you see it? One more time. Watch. Do you know what he's talking about? I don't know. I have no idea. They've never heard this before because the only reason that is there ever an analyst, a conservative, right of center, pro-Trump analyst included in their roundtable discussions? No. It's these guys, Joe, Mika, Reverend Al, right? Molly Jong Fast. Oh, but today we're excited because we have a conservative to tell us the conservative perspective. Please welcome Bill Kristol. Right? That's what they do. The only reason they let this MAGA guy on is because he's the Secretary of the Treasury. So it was a good get. And for their pleasure, they actually got educated. All right. So it didn't end there. There's more. This is so good.
For American farmers, but Democrats closed the government.
So how has the United States made money off of this? And you talk about trying to make more regional relationships. The United States is shooting alleged narco boats in international waters off the coast of Venezuela. The United States has not provided evidence yet that those are indeed drug traffickers. So how are these two things working in tandem?
By the way,
we are preempting
the fact that he has to ask that question again belies his ignorance. Was that hard for anybody to understand? This is Scott Bezzant, the Secretary of the Treasury, explaining how we are forging a relationship with a friendly ally in Argentina, because the alternative, when you ignore Latin America and you let a country go into become an economic basket case, well, the next thing you know, they're sending narco terrorists to our shores to screw with our country because that's the only burgeoning economy they can have is narco trafficking. And their government is so corrupt and dysfunctional that they allow it to happen, like it's going on in Venezuela. So instead of shooting at narco terrorists, we're actually forging a relationship with Argentina and trying to build that relationship. How do you not understand why those two things are related? Wait, what do you mean instead of shooting narco terrorists? You are shooting narco terrorists. No, you asshole. I'm pointing out shooting narco terrorist boats as failures of previous administrations in strengthening our relationship with foreign countries. That will be what ends up happening if you don't. So now we're starting from scratch with Argentina and we're showing you what can be done. You ignoramus. But again, I just want to keep reiterating to you, never take a back seat to these people with regard to intellect or any basic understanding of the news of the day. They're not gifted individuals, these reporters in D.C. The best they've got is a journalism degree. Please, have you had a conversation with somebody with a journalism major? You know, Hillsdale College, famously, they don't even offer journalism as a major. They've got a great journalism department over there. And I know a lot of great graduates from Hillsdale College who are working journalists right now in Washington, D.C., but they did not major in journalism. Hillsdale refuses to allow it. You major in something else like history or English or literature or something important. These people don't, I cannot say it enough. They do not follow the news. They follow what's going on in their own little bubble. And they don't really have a sane understanding, a rational, logical understanding of the world around them and what's going on in the real world. Like most people in Middle America, famously, William F. Buckley said that he would rather be led by the first 100 names in the Boston, Massachusetts phone book. And there was a time when we had phone books, boys and girls. Go back and look it up. The first 100 people in the Boston phone book than by 100 professors at Harvard and Yale. And this is why. All right, so Scott Bezzant now has to condescend to explain himself. And my favorite part is when Joe jumps in. This is Morning Joe. This is his show. But of course, he can't bother himself to leave his little garage studio in Florida where he pretends like he's in New York or Washington, D.C. with the backdrop. So at some point, Joe has to jump in on the television connection and say, hey, remember me? This is my show. And he thinks he's got the gotcha. So watch how this plays out.
Collapse of a government and going back to a Peronist agenda and a left-wing government. What if somebody had raised their hand and said, look at what's happening with Hugo Chavez, look at what's happening with Maduro, and they help the opposition there?
Yeah, hey, Mr. Secretary, I'm just curious, just to clarify, have we made our money back already from the Argentina bailout or the swap line or whatever you call it? Have we made that money back now? Are you saying we're going to make that money back from them over time? Like, what's the payout for that?
Joe, we already have a profit on that swap line.
So have we given them? Did we transfer $20 billion?
No,
and we've already gotten back.
Absolutely not. We made a line of credit available, and a small amount of it was drawn on, and we have made a profit on that.
On that so far. Okay, very good. Hey, Mike.
Okay, so I just need you to understand what happened right there in that exchange. For the first time on MSNBC, from the moment this credit swap and currency swap was announced with the government of Argentina, which was, 5 weeks ago, I want to say. For the first time on this all-news network, the factual truth of that story was relayed to the viewers of MSNBC. Up until now, this entire thing, in fact, Joe, even in his question, had to use the term bailout. Have we given the money in the bailout? Have we made money back on the bailout? What are you calling it again? What's that? It took the Treasury Secretary to go on MSNBC and actually do the work of the newsmen there to deliver the facts and information about our currency swap and credit line with the nation of Argentina, which, forget about being a bailout, forget about costing, not one penny out of the American Treasury was actually delivered in this case. In fact, quite the opposite. Our Treasury has grown because of the relationship with Argentina. And you didn't hear it from a newsman. You didn't hear it from any of the multi-million-dollar paid journalists and reporters that work for MSNBC. Scott Bezzant did that job for them for free. Then he was asked about the affordability crisis. Now, understand something. The Trump administration came in and inherited sky-high inflation from the Biden presidency. And by the way, when they left, when they ended their presidency the first time, yes, there was a pandemic, but even before the pandemic, inflation was very much under control. It wasn't an issue. So now they inherit this sky-high inflation. For the last 11 months that they've been, 10 months, because we don't have the November numbers yet, for the first 10 months of the Trump presidency, inflation has dropped down to a much more manageable, like 2.25%, maybe 2.5%. Still not where it needs to be, but we've come from sky high. Now we've knocked it down really well, but a lot of prices are still up there. Some prices have gone down. It certainly hasn't gone down to the level of the first Trump presidency. And the American people, we see this affordability thing as a cumulative effect over the course of the last 5 or 6 years. Trump and Bessent, they've been in power for 10 months now, and they're like, hey, we're doing great. But of course, most people are like, well, you're not doing great because things are too expensive, right? So then it's challenged. Well, what about affordability? By the way, I love the fact that they're all calling it affordability now. Before Zoran Mamdani decided that that was the market-tested word to use for inflation. See, before that was inflation. Inflation's insane. And everyone say, yeah, inflation's insane. Now Zoran Mamdani says, oh, no, it's not inflation. It's affordability. It's the same thing. It means everything is more expensive than it should be. And it's expensive sometimes because there's actually legitimate reasons for things to cost more. But when it's inflation, it's because prices are exploding because of government deeds, because government has done something to f up the economy, like what Biden did, right? And so now Bessent is asked about that, and he's got a great answer.
We inherited an affordability crisis. We have slowed the price increases down, and they are going to continue to slow down, and that real working class wages will go up, and that will address the affordability issue. And, I think this is what Democrats are afraid to do. They've gone to the courts to try to stop President Trump and this great economy. That hasn't worked. They get overruled at SCOTUS. We go to the media, who carries their water. That hasn't worked, so they shut down the government and hurt the economy. Let's keep the economy open, let our policies kick in, and let's see if what I just talked about, let's see if those two lines cross. Costs come down, real wages go up, and then we can have an election next November.
Honestly, the expressions of Willie Geist here are just priceless during these exchanges. But again, a brilliant job by Scott Bezzant. He's such an asset to this administration and real superstar here, the Treasury Secretary. His next question, this entire interview was just, yeah, but what about this? Okay, fine, you made a good point there, but what about this? And so now it was time to ask about tariffs. Yeah, but the tariffs are really screwing everything up. Right. I bet you don't have an answer for that, do you?
I think that the tariffs help consumers because we are able to, if you go back and look, they brought down the budget deficit. And MIT came out with a study that said that 42% of the great inflation was caused by the big deficit spending. So as you bring down deficit spending, inflation will come down. And the tariffs, right now, we take in substantial tariff income. Over time, that will rebalance as the factories move to the U.S., and that will become the corporate income or wage income. And by bringing down the budget deficit, we are bringing down inflation.
All right. Did you follow all that? It is a masterclass. And listen, you can have your own opinions about tariffs, and I think that so far, I think the jury is still out, but it's been a net benefit right now in terms of being able to negotiate deals with foreign countries, not just on trade, but it's been used as a leverage item and a national security item on things like fentanyl, things like increasing military spending from our NATO allies, and also getting our NATO allies to participate in the peace deal in the Middle East. These things are all intertwined when you're dealing with foreign governments, foreign policy, national security, and yes, the economic aspects of tariffs. But what Scott Bezzant just said there in like 35 seconds is a bit of a masterclass on what the Trump policy is with regard to tariffs. Right now, we're charging tariffs so we can equalize our trade deficits with foreign countries. That income will come in and it'll help pay down the deficit. It's already started to work. That said, when companies want to avoid those tariffs, the only way to do it right now is to onshore and bring manufacturing to the United States of America. And as they begin doing that, it doesn't happen overnight, but we've got commitments from a lot of companies, and they're onshoring right now. They're building up that infrastructure. They're building their factories or acquiring the equipment for it. By the way, the big, beautiful bill also helps them finance all of their new equipment they're acquiring for those factories and amortizing that or capitalizing it across many, many years. That's a big thing that was hidden in the big, beautiful bill. You're welcome. I just fed you that talking point you can use with your friends. Then when you do that, you're going to start hiring Americans. And so what happens? That thing that was being manufactured in a foreign country that you were paying tariffs for, and those tariffs were coming in to pay down our deficit, well, we're not going to get those tariffs anymore. But what you will get is the income tax revenue from those American workers who are now working at the factory here that weren't working before because the factory didn't exist. You get the corporate income taxes from their activities of acquiring things. So that sales tax and business-to-business taxes, plus the income tax that corporation is making from manufacturing here in the United States. Plus, don't forget all of the residual economic impact from all of those employees working. They've got money in their pocket now, and then they're going to spend it on food and goods and services here in the United States. And also don't forget that when you create a factory in the United States to onshore all of the stuff you were doing in China or Malaysia or God knows where else, well, that factory isn't going to be an island. There's going to be a gas station near that factory for all the employees who are coming to work there. There's going to be a Starbucks. There's going to be a 7-Eleven. There's going to be all these other restaurants and fast food places that are going to start to prop up right where that factory is, because suddenly you've got hundreds, if not 1,000 workers coming to that factory, and small businesses are going to be created to service those employees as they're coming and going to work. You can call that trickle-down economics if you'd like, but it's basic free market principles that always happen when you let the economic engine of free market in the United States unleashed and go. Uninhibited and harnessed by the government forcing regulations or forcing wage conditions or environmental conditions that compel a corporation to say, you know what, it's not worth it to manufacture here in the United States. Let's go do it in China, especially since there's no tariffs. So we can just manufacture there, import the goods here. It's cheaper, and why not? Well, now that option isn't on the table in the way that it was, and that's what'll end up happening. That's how the free market works. You know how I know? Because I recently saw a woman on CNN tell me that the lack of SNAP benefits right now is affecting the place she goes to get her eyebrows done. 2 people were going to lose their job because women who aren't getting SNAP benefits anymore are spending their money on food for their children instead of going to the salon. That's another way of looking at it. But it's all the same basic free market economic principles. Let businesses thrive. Let them hire Americans. Let them manufacture here in America. And everything starts to grow. That's Scott Bezzant. That's your Treasury Secretary. And that is a smug, self-satisfied look on his face, which I absolutely adore, and he's earned it. What a time to be alive.